The fallen angels themselves could not be killed by the flood. They were bound in the earth to prevent them from influencing mankind again, at least for 70 generations. I've often wondered, does the Mayan calendar end on the release date for the 200 fallen angels? This is of course speculatory. There is no direct biblical evidence to validate this theory. But if you take the starting date of the calendar, 3114 BC, and add 2012 years, and divide that by 70, you get an average of 73 and a quarter years for a generation. That's pretty close to the average age people in the U.S. and other developed countries die. The Bible in Psalms 90, verse 10, states a man's days on earth consist of 70 years, 80 if he has strength. Genetically, a modern man can live to 120 years, and there are occasionally those who get close to these years. Today, the U.S. life expectancy is 77.6 years. So it's not unreasonable to think that we could see the releasing of these beings at this time. The Circle of the Rephaim is just one of many monolithic structures in areas that biblically were the home of giants. Just in the Golan Heights alone, there are thousands of dolmens. A dolmen is a structure made up of 2 or more large stones, with a space in between kept by a horizontal stone. They are usually associated with being tombs. Israeli archaeologists have located 8,500 dolmens in the Golan Heights. These dolmens have 20 different and distinct style types among them, presumably from different tribes. Some structures are over 7 meters in height and have stones weighing over 50 tons used in their construction. Interestingly enough, there are dolmens in northern Britain and France that have a similar appearance to the dolmens in the Golan Heights, suggesting a possible migrating pattern of the giants. The Avites were giants that lived in the coastal regions of what is now the Gaza Strip and surrounding area. The ancient Egyptians were in conflict with them and wrote about them. They called one of their cities Ashdod, the city of giants. Before Joshua's conquest of Canaan, the Bible tells us in Deuteronomy 2:23 that the Kapharites came and killed many of them and took their place in the land. The Kapharites were the Philistines. They came from the city of Kaphtar, an area on the easternmost part of the Nile Delta. Although some modern sources place Kaphtor at ancient Crete or Cyprus, they don't agree with the biblical and archaeological evidence that points to them emigrating from Egypt. During the Exodus, God leads the children of Israel away from this area because of the Philistines' occupation of it. Not necessarily all the giants had been displaced. By the time of David, Goliath and other giants were living in the ancient Avite city of Gath. The Anakites of Hebron had settled in the area where Abraham had lived. Abraham pitched his tent near the city of Mamre after he and Lot went their separate ways. Mamre is next to Hebron, and at Hebron, in a cave, he was buried. Isaac and Jacob were also buried with him there. In Abraham's time, the Anakites were not there, and Hebron was a tiny Hittite town. By the time Joshua, Caleb, and the other 10 Hebrew spies arrived at Hebron, it is the capital of the Anakites. The Anakites were also known as the sons of Anak, Anak being their forefather. Anak means long-necked, obviously referring to the unusual length of his head and neck. Anak's forefather was Arba. Arba means strength of Baal. And Hebron was once known as Kiriath Arba, the city of Arba. Sometime in the 400-plus years, from the time of Abraham to the time of the Exodus, these giants migrated to Hebron and built it up. Numbers 13:22 gives us the time frame. Hebron was built up 7 years before the city of Zon in Egypt. Zon has many cities built upon it, and the oldest ruins date to the 6th Egyptian dynasty. Today the city is known as Tanis. At the time of the conquest of Canaan, at least 3 descendants of Anak were living in Hebron, according to the book of Numbers, chapter 13, verses 22, 28, and 32. Their names were Ahman, which means brother of the portion, Shishai, which means fierce noble, and Talmai, which means bold-spirited. By the end of the 7-year conquest of Canaan, there were no giants in Israeli territory, although there were still some giants in the city of Gath and in Philistine land. The three descendants of Anak and the other giants living in Israeli territory may not have all been killed. They may have migrated elsewhere to the land of the Philistines or to other parts of the world. There is no biblical record of the three descendants of Anak being killed by the Israelis. The Raphites of Baal were giants that lived in Syria. They were mentioned in ancient records from the city of Ugarit. Ugarit was a Canaanite port city in northern Syria. It had connections with Egypt and Cyprus, and was at its peak from 1450 to 1200 BC. Letters from its last kings to the king of Cyprus tell of the invasion force from the sea peoples into his city, and of the destruction they were causing. No help came to them, and the city was burned down in 1190 BC. Their Hall of Records references the Rephaim in two ways: as a type of people or persons, and in later times as dead kings or ancestors, that they would give food and drink offerings to for blessings from the spirit world. An inscription from Byblos, a city in Lebanon, on a tomb declares that if anyone disrupts the occupant's bones, the mighty Og will avenge him. This inscription was dated to 500 BC, around 900 years after the death of Og. This may be a confirmation of a concept in the book of Enoch into the nature of the Nephilim and their connection to evil spirits or demons. This apocryphal text states that when the Nephilim before the flood died, their spirits would remain on the earth, having no form, but were to be as a mist or a cloud, causing evil upon the earth. It would stand to reason that the Nephilim that came after the flood would suffer the same fate after their death. The inscription invoking Og to protect someone's remains 900 years after Og's death, coupled with the revering of these dead kings with food and drink offerings, may point to their demonic influence after their deaths. The most famous of the giants of the Bible was Goliath of Gath. His death would mark the ending of the giants near Israel. As a young man, David would kill Goliath, and near the end of his reign, his soldiers would kill the remaining giants. Many cultures would record their encounters with giants, from the British Isles to the Native Americans living on the west coast of America. Over the years, giant skeletons have been found that attest to their presence, and that at one time there were giants living in the land. Thank you for your interest in this show, and may God bless and keep you.
The Revelation 13 podcast is hosted by Mike Hopwood and is a podcast dedicated to the study of end-time events, news events, and ancient mysteries.